All right, g'day, folks. It's me, Greg. I'm back. We're back for Lunch and Learn. Hooray! It's been a while. We're going through today's topic is going to be about fabric and what to do once your trial runs out. So my trial has got 30 days left in it, I think 30 days, and the countdown has begun. And a lot of the people in the chat here will have been using fabric since before the trial started. And the trial just kept resetting. It went to 59 days over and over and over again. And then suddenly it started counting down about 30 days ago. So I thought it was a good time to talk about fabric and licensing and monitoring and how do we figure out how much we're going to do. I span up, if you were following me last year, I span up a whole bunch of fabric stuff. We did pretty much every example there was in the book. And that was all running all the way through. I didn't turn any of it off, and it turned out I was running quite a lot of capacity, and so I needed to figure out how to do that before Fabric started charging me. So what happens when our Fabric trial runs out, and then how do we right size our licensing and all that kind of stuff? Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to get started. For this is very unusual for a lunch and learn. I don't want to set any expectations that I'm always prepared, but I am prepared for this one today because I think this is going to be a topic I'll be talking about quite a bit with people. And so I did do some slides, so you can be extremely surprised. If you're in the chat, let me know if you're new. It'd be great to know where you're from. Welcome to those people that have joined since I started talking. Okay, so what do we do when our free fabric capacity runs out? And what do we do? So this session is brought to you by my employers, Dear Watson Consulting. We are a data and AI solution partner. We can help you out with your fabric, and we've got a special offer for fabric people at the end of the thing. You might be able to save some money on fabric. This is what today's session is about. How do we save money, right? What are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about, well, first I want to introduce all of the different concepts around fabric. We kind of can't talk about fabric licensing without introducing how the kind of fabric world fits together. Once we know how it all fits together, we can talk about the different types of the licenses that we might be considering. And then what are the different things that we should actually buy? Like, how do we figure out what kind of fabric SKU? Do I need an F2, an F2048? What is the difference between those two things? And then what happens to Power BI licenses and how does that all fit together? And then how do we figure that out using our free capacity? We've got the ability to figure that out, and I'll show you how to do that so that you can figure out how much your capacity you're using now. And then I'll give you some tips on how to monitor it going forward, how to read your Azure bills, and then also how to save some money by optimizing your fabric. So hopefully that's what you're here for, because that's what we're talking about. All right. So let's begin. Fabric concepts. So when you're talking about Microsoft Fabric, you need to understand how the whole world kind of fits together. So you've got your organization, right? Company A in this situation, and you spun up some Microsoft stuff. If you've got any kind of Microsoft stuff, whether you've just got Outlook or you've got, Office 360 or Microsoft 365, it's called these days. If you've got anything to do with that inside your company, you'll have what's called a tenant, right? And that's called an Entra ID tenant these days. It used to be called Azure AD. Everybody remembers AD if they've been in IT for a while, Active Directory. It's now called Entra ID. So that organizational tenant, and that's like your .onmicrosoft.com tenant. Okay, which if you've ever gone onto SharePoint, you might notice that it says, the name of your company .onmicrosoft.com. That's your tenant name. Okay, so underneath your tenant, you'll have subscriptions. So subscriptions are the stuff that you're paying for within your tenant, and you can have lots of different types of subscriptions. You might not have any exposure to this if your admins take care of it, but you'll have a subscription, and that's what you'll either. There's two ways to get a subscription really. You can put your credit card in, and it's called a pay-as-you-go subscription, and you do that through the Microsoft Azure portal, or you can speak to a partner like me, and I can spin up a subscription for you and charge you money for it. I'll invoice you, right? So you can, and then Microsoft bills me and I bill you. And so it works that way. And so you have this, you can either get a subscription through your partner or you can get a subscription directly through Microsoft if you use your credit card. And there's probably other ways as well, but they're the two main ones that you kind of see people going. capacity. So you spin up what's called resource groups. Then inside your resource groups, you're going to spin up your particular fabric capacities. And so in this organization, they've got two capacities spun up at the moment, right? They've got an F64 and an F8 capacity. So you've got this concept of a capacity. And that capacity is a blob of compute. So it's a blob of basically memory, compute, and storage all put together like a server, if you like, a dedicated server. It's not exactly the same concept as a server, and it's very difficult to do a one-to-one comparison. A lot of people ask questions about licensing when they're asking about thing. They say, well, how many cores do I get? How much memory do I get? It's not the same because capacity is actually dynamic. They move slightly. And so there's no single fixed amount of compute you necessarily get. And we'll talk about some of the more complex concepts later. But just know it's a blob of compute. That's kind of how you can think about a capacity: storage, compute, and memory all together. And then inside your capacity, there's this new kind of fairly new concept inside Fabric, which is called domains. So you'll have your different domains. That's typically broken up between your departments inside your organization. So you'll have your finance domain and your HR domain or whatever it is, or your operations domain. And then a domain is essentially a way of collecting up workspaces. So that's the final piece, right? So these are the things that when you go into app.powerbi.com or app.fabric.com or wherever you go now, you'll have a bunch of different workspaces. Those workspaces can be collected up as a domain. Those domains all live on a capacity, which lives inside a subscription, which lives inside a tenant, which lives inside your company. Okay, and that is how it all kind of fits together. So what we need to do, the things that we get charged for is the capacity. So we need to figure out how much capacity we're using for all of our stuff that we've spun up inside our workspaces inside Fabric. Workspaces can have different license modes, right? And so you've got a bunch of different workspace types that you can spin up within your domains, right? So you could have a pro workspace, which means that'd be a lot of people will be using pro workspaces now. That's if you've just spun up Power BI with a pro license, you can use basic Power BI features, then it'll be a pro workspace. You can have a premium per user workspace, which is a Power BI concept as well, where you get the premium features of Power BI spun up inside a workspace. Then there's this premium per capacity style workspace that gets a little diamond next to it. These are the old P SKUs. The P SKUs are being deprecated. So they're asking all the P SKU people to move over to F SKUs. And there is a one-to-one cost thing. It's not going to cost you any more to move. If you are on a P1, you move to an F64 in Fabric, same costs. And there's no difference in functionality as far as I know. I don't think there's any significant difference in functionality. But those P SKUs are being deprecated. So if you're currently running premium, then have a chat to me and I'll tell you what to do in terms of moving your stuff over to F SKUs, because that's something that you will need to do in the next little while. And then you have A SKUs, and they're the embedded capacities. That's if you're doing Power BI embedded. So you've got F SKUs and P SKUs and A SKUs and PPU and Pro, and you can assign those to any one of these workspaces. So it gets pretty confusing. Then, of course, you could have a trial workspace, which is what a lot of people have now, right? So they have a Power BI, a Fabric trial workspace, which is basically a free license. You get it for free, and you can try everything in Fabric. So you get all of the Fabric experiences here in our trial license, and this is probably what you've got right now if you're trying Fabric out. You probably spun up the trial, and then you assign the trial capacity to your workspace, and you get the little diamond next to it, and then you can spin up Fabric stuff inside your trial workspace. So that's kind of where everyone's at. Okay. So we say to ourselves, okay, so what are the different license stuff? So we're about to run out of trial. There's 30 days to go on my trial, or however many days to go left on your trial. What do I have to do to then what is my options? What are my options in terms of buying? What can I buy to actually make these workspaces work? Because when your trial runs out, your workspace, all the Fabric stuff inside your workspace will disappear. Okay. Now they don't delete it; they just disappear it. And so what they do is then if you apply a workspace you apply an appropriate license to that workspace, it'll reappear. It's like they just turn off the ability to see what's happening in it, right? So if you do run out of capacity, if you do run out of your trial and you've got lots of stuff in there, I don't think they will delete those artifacts, those fabric artifacts. You just won't be able to get to them because you don't have the license to get to them. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. Now, I'm not 100% sure on that. Do we have anyone from Microsoft here today? I can't see anyone's name. No. Oh, maybe there is. I don't know. Is Darren here?
I'm hiding.
Oh, Darren's here. Is that right, Darren? Do they? They don't delete the stuff in the workspace. Is that right?
There is now a note on the trial that we might delete it after 7 days. So.
Oh, okay. There you go. Yeah.
But yeah, that was I originally understood the same thing as you, that it was just being hidden, but yep, someone has recently
decided that they do need to free up the space. Okay, so there's something that you need to keep in mind, is that you've only probably got a certain amount of time, whether it's 7 days or however long, to apply the new license before those artifacts will be deleted. So yeah, I was about to say I wouldn't risk it anyway. I would apply a license beforehand or move those artifacts somewhere. Just do something, whatever you need to do to those artifacts to make them work, even if it's just apply an F2 SKU just to keep them going, then you potentially might need to do that. Okay, so what are the different SKUs? What can we buy? Okay, so you will have seen this. You've probably, if you've been looking into this, you've got the F2 and the F4 and the F8 and the F16. They go up exponentially up to F2048, which is quite an expensive SKU to buy, I'm sure. And then you get these capacity units, and then you get 2 capacity units, and you get 2048 capacity units. And I'm sure a lot of people, when they first look at Microsoft licensing, they go, oh, what does that mean? And it does get a little bit confusing. And then you look over here and you go, vCores. I know what vCores are. I get 0.25 of a vCore, but it's not, that doesn't give you a really good idea of actually what is a Power BI vCore, and then how does it how much capacity is that, and how much data can I process with my 4 capacity units? And that's kind of where everybody's at the moment, is that we need to be able to figure out exactly, okay, what is my current fabric trial? What am I actually doing with it? And then which one of these SKUs do I need to apply to be able to continue to run that workload as it has been running now without necessarily overspending? So everyone's running effectively, and you'll see here the trial is an F64 SKU, right? So you get F64 power right now. So you can run a lot of stuff. It's an amazing free offer, to be honest. You get like quite a good test of Fabric's capacity, because this trial SKU is quite powerful. Now, you don't necessarily want to be buying F64 SKUs though for all of the workspaces, or you can assign multiple workspaces to a single SKUs or to a single capacity. So you might want to buy one F64 for your production, say, but then you don't want to have multiple F64s necessarily. Maybe you want to put just an F4 in place for like your test and dev or whatever it is, right? So we need to understand, okay, what are the workloads using, and then how do we assign the appropriate thing, and what does a capacity unit mean, and how do they measure capacity units, and how do I know what my capacity units are doing, and all those questions, right? So you have this question of like, what do I need to buy? And the answers come from a bunch of different questions. One of them is like, how many Power BI end users do you have? And then how many Power BI developers do you have? And then how many Fabric data engineers or the Fabric users, so people who are going to manipulate Fabric objects, are we going to have? And then how much of my capacity is my Fabric trial using? So I'll cover the user stuff. The user stuff has been fairly well covered in the past, particularly on the Power BI side. The Fabric side, it's not very complicated. So we can kind of, because Fabric works in capacities, but we do need to just cover off the Power BI kind of licensing thing. So I'll run through this relatively quickly, and then we can start talking about our Fabric capacities. Okay. So first, let's talk about per user licenses. So these are Fabric / Power BI per user licenses. There's 3 modes of different licenses. There's what's called the Fabric free license. It used to be called the Power BI free license, and they changed the name to Fabric free. I guess it's because to make it more fabricy, but it's the same license that it's always been. Okay. You can create things in Fabric. It may be that they changed it to the Fabric free license because to manipulate Fabric objects, you need some kind of license, and it makes more sense to have a Fabric name. But anyway, so you can do a bunch of stuff on your free tier. You can access the Fabric web application, which is nice. You can get to Fabric. You can create Fabric workspaces. That's a tick. You can create non-Power BI Fabric items inside your Fabric workspace. You can share your non-Power BI Fabric items. So what's a non-Power BI Fabric item, I hear you ask? So that's stuff inside Fabric that isn't a report or a semantic model or a dashboard or any of those things that you create in Power BI. So that would be something like a lakehouse or a event stream, or these are the Fabric specific items. So a non-Power BI Fabric item, you can access that with a free license because Fabric doesn't actually need a per user, doesn't have a per user license concept as such. You just have the capacity and you can do whatever you want as long as you've got capacity. So essentially anybody with a license, with a free license, can access all the Fabric stuff as long as there's stuff, as long as it's in a Fabric capacity workspace, which is what they're kind of talking about here. So they say in a Fabric capacity workspace. And then you can also do the normal Power BI stuff as well, which is like you can create your own content. You can publish your content to your My Workspace. And you can't share it because you're a free user, right? Sharing is the paywall for Power BI, as we have known for a long time. Okay, if you want to share content or do other things, then you need either a Pro or a PPU license. I won't cover those in detail because they're probably beyond the scope of this Fabric discussion. But I do have a couple more slides on just what's happening there. But if you're doing Power BI stuff, then you'll need a Pro or a PPU license to do your Power BI stuff. If you're just doing Fabric stuff, you just need a Fabric free license to access those Fabric-y things. So you can see the Power BI in Fabric free account. So a Power BI in Fabric free account can create reports in Power BI desktop. That's always been the case. You get the standard data security encryption that you get across everything, but you can't do any of the other Power BI stuff, right? So you can't publish and share. You can't do advanced AI and data flows, data marts, XML endpoints, which are premium features. If you have a Fabric F64 or higher, then you start to be able to do these things because you have the premium capacity side of things here. So that's what this means by when it says includes Microsoft Fabric. So if you've got a P SKU or an F64 SKU or higher, you get to start be able to do all the cool premium features of Power BI as well. Okay, but you'll still need licenses to develop stuff. Anyway, the whole Power BI licensing thing gets very confusing, I know. I'll do my best to, if you've got questions, ask me. But yeah, this is the breakdown of what you can and can't do with your different licenses on the Power BI side. Okay, and you'll see you get one lake and all this kind of stuff because that's a Fabric object. But everything else is either Pro or Premium. Okay, we lost our presentation. Hang on, let me get back to it. Then we got to swap the screens. Okay, we're back. So this is how I think about my Power BI user licenses. If I'm thinking about it, is the first thing I think to myself is when someone says, "Hey, I want to get some Power BI, and is it free?" That's the first thing they always ask, and I say, "Well, do you need to share with other people, like the interactive content, or are you just going to create the reports for yourself and PDF them and then share them via email with people?" And they're like, "No, I want people to be able to click around in my pull report." Okay, well, that's a no on the free users thing because free users can only create content for themselves. Okay. So if you need interactive content, then are you going to use an F64 or higher Fabric license? If you are going to use an F64 or higher, then you get free users. People can access and interact with cool things because you're using that premium capacity. If that's a no, and you want those fancy premium features like the XMLA endpoint, then they need to be PPU users. Otherwise, if it's a no here, then they are Pro users. Okay, that's the basics of it. There's obviously lots of nuance in this kind of thing, but this is how I kind of think about it. Is that like, and most people end up down here at the moment in this kind of Pro user land. If you're I think about it as if you're a small organization, you're probably going to use pro users in your Power BI world with a small kind of fabric capacity to do all your fabric stuff. You're going to have maybe an F4, an F8, an F16 capacity to run your fabric stuff, and you're going to run a bunch of pro users. It's a really great small business end-to-end data platform. Really good architecture. You get heaps and heaps of functionality, and it doesn't cost very much. So that's kind of the small business, the SMC side of the world. If you're in the enterprise side of the world, you're almost certainly going to go F64. And then in that case, you do get your end users start to become free. You can start to share things out to the organization. It just depends on how much capacity you want to use, all that kind of stuff. And then if you're an SMC, but you've got some extra complexity in the way that you want to do things, you want to run certain workloads, or you have some advanced stuff you want to do, then you might be a PPU side of the fence there. But really, I'd say a good portion of SMCs fall into the pro users with a small fabric kind of bucket, and everybody else falls into a premium bucket for the way you think about fabric. For your Power BI users at least. So that's your end users that are going to use all your reports and stuff like that at the end. Okay, so that's our little decision tree, sort of came up with that. So then the next question is, how much fabric capacity am I using? So there's a fabric capacity metrics app. Let's have a look at it. Okay, so here's a little link to a website that takes me into the fabric capacity. Oh, look, ChatGPT. Hi. Fabric capacity metrics app. Here it is. What is it? Here's the link. I'll put the link in the chat for those of you that are interested. There's a question from Ross. Is there any documentation around to show what active users hitting the reports, which FSKU? Yes. So this is what we're going to be talking about, is the Fabric Capacity Metrics app. There's lots of different ways to look at your who's doing what and where. There's two kind of main areas inside your Fabric environment that we'll talk about, that you can kind of look at. Usage type scenario. If you want to do Power BI type usage, like who's using what report type usage, then I'll just go back to my home. If you're here in Fabric or Power BI and you go here and then there's this admin monitoring thing at the top, I'll just click that again because I went really fast and I'm worried about going too fast for people. Okay, so here, there's above my workspace, there's an admin monitoring. And so if you click on admin monitoring, it gives you like your admin monitoring report situation, right? And you can look at feature usage and adoption. There's its own report. So this is how much Power BI stuff's getting used and other monitoring type things, right? So this is great. You know, it's not the world's prettiest report, but it does the job. We won't be covering this in detail, but just know that this is another way you've got what's using in terms of your capacity, what are the different operations that get used, all that kind of stuff. So this is just basic kind of monitoring to show you what's being used and all those bits and pieces. The other thing that you can do, if you go here to the App Store, go and have a look at all the apps, and you click up here in the top right and you say Get Apps. And then you type Fabric. Will probably get me there. And there's one here from by me. I guess that's one that I published. There's this Microsoft Fabric Capacity Monitoring app, Metrics app. Click on that. It'll load. You hit Get It Now. It'll download the app into your local Power BI workspace, and then you'll have the app available. I'm not going to get it now because I've already got it. Don't know if I can get out of this. Okay, so then if I scroll down to my app, then I've got this Microsoft Capacity Metrics app that's been loaded. And then here's the app. And then I can select at the top the capacity. So this is my trial capacity that I've got going. And it'll give me access to any other capacities that I have access to. I only have access to one, the trial capacity. Now here at Dear Watson, we've got like 6 different trials running simultaneously, it turns out, because everybody signed up for the trial. But I only have access to see my trial, and then Steve, he might jump on here. He only has access to see his trial, etc., etc. Now, if you have different capacities spun up, like paid capacities, then they'll probably appear here, depending if you're a capacity admin. So it just shows you the ones that you have admin rights over. Now, I will say that this app, there's a lot going on, right? You've got this multi-metric ribbon chart with CUs, and you can see we've got a nice ribbon chart happening here. You can see all the multiple things. You've got your CU percentage over time here. This shows you what, look, I'm not using anywhere near 100%. And look at this nice little ramp down. This is after I made some changes. We'll talk about that in a sec. So this shows me how much of my CUs I'm using, right? So that's what that one's supposed to do. And then here's the specific things that are actually using all the capacity. And I just want to just pause for a second here, because can we please talk about this part of the report, right? And specifically, I want to just like zoom in even more. I want to talk about this part of the report right here and this part of the report right here. Because when I first looked at this, I'm using 53 million CUs. How many million CUs? That's 16,900,000. And then I'm like, oh no, this is just a 4 decimal places. Why is it 4 decimal places? It's the word. Anyway, sorry about that. But it says 3 million CUs, right? And this is some beautiful UI work by the Power BI devs. So I don't know if you remember our thing, but it said an F2 gets 4 CUs, and this says 3 million CUs. But did I use 3 million CUs? I can't afford 3 million CUs. Not even F 2048 gives you 3 million CUs, but then you realize that this isn't CUs, this is CU seconds. CU seconds. It's not CUs. So this is a big point of confusion that will make you freak out if you like, because I freaked out. So I'm sure you will as well when you first look at your capacity metrics app, is that you're not using 3 million, you've used 3 million CU seconds, which is still a fair bit. Like this is the New York City taxi database. It's a very large piece, but and that's over the whole period, I guess. So over between Friday the 3rd and Friday the 17th, I used 3 million CU seconds in the New York City taxi database. Custo. This is a Custo stream, streaming the whole New York taxi movements over time. That's why it's so big, right? And so you see this event streams using a lot of stuff too. So this is the thing I don't like about the capacity metrics app, is that it's like too precise. This is fantastic for when you want to drill into the details, and we'll talk about drilling into the details. But if you just want a general idea, and that's kind of what this one's supposed to give you, is that 100% is 100% of your F64 trial capacity, right? And actually, if you look at the details here, you can see it says our total CU usage is 14.59% of my 100% in CUs, which is 1920. And then this is still confusing, because you say, well, what do you mean 1920? I've only got 8 CUs. I've got an F8. What is it? And then you go, oh no, it's CU seconds. It's CU seconds. Okay, so I get 1920 CU seconds, but how does that work? I don't understand. And then you realize that this is measured every 30 seconds. Okay, so you get 1920 CUs in 30 seconds if you've got an F64 capacity. Took me a while to figure that out. Okay. So these are 30-second intervals that it polls at. It doesn't poll at all of them. I've noticed there's if you zoom in like to highly precise kind of detail, it does show little gaps in the polling, but it does, so you can see the gaps start to appear. But this is your 30-second increment polling, and you can see that if you look at the top there, that one's right on the minute, and then you'll find another one and it'll be at a 30-second. There's one there. It's got 30 seconds. Okay. So it's measuring at 30-second intervals how many CU seconds you're using. And in an F64 capacity, you get 1920 CUs. So I used 260, which is 13.59% of my 1920. That's how many I use in that 30-second interval. Okay. And so then if you get your calculator out, you can start to do calculator stuff and figure out, well, that means I would need what? Yeah, so it takes a while to figure out, right? So to make it a bit easier, because this is too complicated, I think, for people, I just built a report. So I just built a report that points to that capacity app and then just puts lines on the graph to say, well, this is F2 and then this is F4 and this is F8, this is F16. I only did it up to F64 because I figured this would be more for use for people that are trying to get under that F64 amount. But you could just add a couple of the measures are really straightforward. You could just add a few more measures if you wanted to have it go higher than F64. But this takes you through. You can select your capacity, and then it'll show you, okay, well, this capacity, well, it was above. So this is F8. You can see it's F8 over here, right? And I was running above F8 here. And now it's running below, well below, nicely under my F2, which is what I want to assign this this workload. Because this is just my muck around, Greg's fun, do crazy stuff workload. I don't want to really spend any more than an F2 on this one. And so this helps me see that, okay, generally speaking, we'll talk a lot about the way smoothing and bursting and all these different concepts work, but this is a bit of a simplified view that tells you, hey, okay, this capacity, you're probably going to need an F2 for this one because you need to turn some stuff off. So I've got a template for this. I'll put a link in the chat and you guys can have that for free. That's my gift to you, is my little F64. Now what you need to do is you need to just point it to your to the capacity metrics app. So you need to install the app first, and then you get this report and you point it to the app, and then it just downloads the important, it just gives you the important stuff. It's just a one pager real quick, but that's my gift to you. Okay, hopefully it's accurate. I'm pretty sure it is, but if you find there's a problem, let me know. Okay, we got to turn that off. What are we trying to do? We're trying to see the chat. Okay. Darren's got a link in the chat of how to use the about how to use the capacity metrics app. Yeah, there is a lot of really good stuff here. So when you now go, okay, so this is what I did. I was like, okay, this is too much. I've got an F8. I don't want to be using F8. I want to get it down to here, so it's F2, right? How do I turn this stuff off? And what do I need to do? So this is where this becomes really useful. So now I can say, okay, my Custo database in my KQL workspace is using up a whole bunch of capacity. Well, I do love KQL, and that was fun to play around with the New York City taxi database, but I don't want to be paying $3,000 a month to run that little demo. Let's turn it off. Okay. And so now is a good time to go through all your different workspaces. And you see I've got another workspace here called Fabric Playground. I've got one called Wacky Workspace from when I did the Wacky Workspace or the Wacky IoT demo. Like all of these pieces I don't necessarily need. And actually KQL Workspace, Wacky Workspace, and I think Fabric Playground hasn't been turned off, but I deleted a bunch of stuff out of it. But I deleted a few of these workspaces that we're just using. In fact, I deleted them on Wednesday, the 8th of May. And how do I know that? Because that's what I was doing, and this is what I'm doing now. And so that's nice. Okay, so use the Fabric Capacity Metrics app to figure out where is all your workloads going, and then turn off the ones that you don't want to be using when you start to move into the new world, right? Which is the paid world. There is a whole bunch of extra functionality here, which you can talk about in terms of understanding when it's being throttled, all those bits and pieces. And I think I've got a bit more in the presentation about that. So why don't we go back to that? Okay. And swap the display. I really wish I could set that as default. I probably can somewhere. So that's your Fabric Capacity Metrics app. I made it simpler with this Fabric SKU. I'll give you a link to that soon. And then there's a little description of like how it works and how we get to this calculation. But it's basically, this is just an averaged view. So this doesn't take into account, like, what about spikes? You know, like a lot of people worry about, well, does that mean if I like run nothing, 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 and then I spike to F64 and then run nothing, 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 does that mean I need an F64 SKU, or can I get away with the low SKU, or how does that work? Right? the way that works is the way that Fabric looks after the way it kind of shapes the data. So what you can actually do is you can borrow from your future capacity. So let's say you run nothing overnight. If you have a spike like that, you can actually borrow it. It automatically does this for you. You don't have to do anything. It will borrow from your future capacity to allow you to run that spike so that it will actually work, right? And so that means that you don't necessarily need to have F64 level, even if it spikes quite high. It just and actually F4 and F2 get more higher relative compute because they're often used in sort of dev cases where there are those kind of big spikes, and so you actually get quite a bit of leeway. So they're pretty good at smoothing out the graph so that you kind of using it's kind of average. It's not averaged out, but it's smoothed out over the day so that this kind of view should at least give you a bit of an idea of kind of where your main capacity is. Now, if you use it, it only lasts for a short amount of time. If you use it for a long period of time, it'll start to just be at F64, right? You can only do that for true spikes where there's like maybe there's like one script that runs a little bit, it's a bit chunkier today for whatever reason, then it will just go, okay, well that was just a one-off, and it'll smooth it out and borrow from your future capacity where you're not using anything to kind of pay for that, if you like. So that's pretty cool. Some other considerations around when you're buying your FSKUs, because these are not the only things you can need to look at. This is a good view of it, but you do need to take a couple of things into consideration if you're using Spark or if you're using a data warehouse, right? And this is where we start to learn about bursting. This is what I was just talking about, the bursting and concurrency and all this kind of stuff, right? If you're using Spark, you need to look at the concurrency limits and queuing and the way that Spark works, and then also the way starter pools are managed in Spark, because they use capacity in a particular way. Okay, and so there's a couple of links here. We might be able to have a quick look at them. So you have like concurrency, throttling, and queuing. So this is because one capacity unit equals 2 Spark vCores. Okay, so if you have a particular Spark workload that you need to run and you're trying to figure out what the capacity you need is, then you need to come here and have a look at this and understand how it works, because that might change. Just your Spark capacity might change your thinking around which SKU you need. So that's one thing that you need to know. And then the other one is the starter pools here, how to set up starter pools. But this is also dynamically allocated and stuff. So you need to understand what you need in terms of your starter pools from a capacity settings point of view. So there's some information here about, here we go, about what your max node limits for your starter pools if you're doing Spark workloads. So if you're coming from Databricks or you're coming from a Spark environment, then you need to just understand this piece as well. So it's a little bit more complicated than just looking at your capacity. The other thing that catches people out that you need to consider pretty carefully is what your users are going to, your usage. So interactive usage can actually spike your capacity quite a lot, particularly if you're going F64 or above and all your users are free users and they're smashing your F64 usage, then you'll see that those interactive usage gets spiked quite a bit. I'm a big fan of separating out I'm a big fan of the idea, at least, of separating out, say, your data engineering with your interactive and maybe having 2 capacities. I probably prefer to see, at least I'm experimenting with this, like if you have like 2 domains, say your finance people and your operations people, and your finance people, they just want to run their finance stuff and they want to make sure that operations never interrupt that and they want to have complete control over it, then give them a separate capacity to work with, right? And then your operations people, they might be running some crazy workloads and doing a bunch of stuff, and they're never going to impact the financial reporting because the 2 capacities are separate. So think about how you're going to structure those capacities so that things don't interrupt each other as well. Instead of just buying one F8, you might buy 2 F4s, and it might be a better way of balancing it out. But that's also a good way to kind of move the subscription costs around as well. So something to consider anyway. I'm not sure if that's the definitive way to do things yet. And, you know, this is still pretty early days, but something to keep in mind. Couple of comments from Darren. You can script scaling up the F2, so you can run an F2 for most of the week and then run to an F8 on a Monday morning when you know you have a weekly spike. That's another really good idea. And we'll talk a little bit about auto pausing and things like that soon as well. The other quick consideration here is if you're using a data warehouse, you need to think about this burstable capacity situation as well from a data warehousing point of view. So this is the other consideration. Burstable capacity has a direct correlation to the skew that's been assigned to the capacity, right? So there's some math here on how to figure it out. And then this is where that talks about that smoothing that we were talking about earlier. When the scale factor is over 1, it means burstable capacity is being used to meet the demands of the workload. It means your workload is borrowing capacity units from a future time interval, which is the fundamental concept of smoothing, okay? So that's smoothing offers relief for customers who create sudden spikes during peak times. They have a lot of idle capacity that's unused. Smoothing simplifies capacity management by spreading the evaluation of compute to ensure that the customer jobs run smoothly. So that's kind of cool. I like smoothing. I think that's really good, a really good kind of concept, and so that's really nifty. All right. So we covered most of the extra stuff on the metrics app. There's quite a lot you can go through in terms of the metrics app. There is a lovely learn document like there is for everything on what you can do in the metrics app. Here it is. I think we already put it in there, but how to install it, what the compute page does, what each one of these charts does. Here's an example of where you see a lot of interactive. So see the blue is your background work, and then your red is your interactive, and you see how it spikes. That's users using your stuff. You can change a whole bunch of stuff. You can look at when throttling happens. You can look at all the different pieces. So that metrics app, like I know I was complaining about the precision earlier, but actually that's really good. And then if you want to make more simple views like I've done, then you can just point to the data set and build your own, I guess. But the precision of it is actually really helpful when you're looking at this kind of understanding exactly how much capacity you're using and all that kind of stuff. You can monitor stuff. You can look. Here's all information on the different pages and things like that as well. And you can monitor pause capacities as well, which is cool. So you can see whether it's suspended or not. Okay. So that's the metrics app. So once you've purchased your workload, and then you get your bill from Azure. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen an Azure bill, but depending on which view you take of it, you can look at a fairly simplified view, or you can go really, really detailed. There is a nice Learn article here on how to understand your bill. Here's all of the ways. So if you are a bean counter and you want to absolutely see exactly what every single CU thing that needs to be done, then here's all the different measures they use to figure out your bill, right? I am not going to go through this list. But you can then measure your bill back against your capacity metrics app. So you can confirm that Microsoft's not ripping you off, that they're not doing something. You can actually look at exactly every single operation that happened on your capacity. You can confirm, hey, Joe Blogs, did you go and write this to OneLake? Yep. Was that on the 12th? Yep. Okay. If you want to do that, feel free. So you can go all the way through your bill and you can have a look at it. Now, if you want to save money, think about pausing and resuming your capacity. This is definitely something that I'll be doing for an F64 capacity because I want to have a go at Copilot, and I can get access via the MVP tenant. But if I want my own Copilot, then this is one potential way you could approach it. You could have a larger capacity, and as Darren said, you can spin down and spin up. but you can also pause and resume a capacity, right? So there's information on how to pause and resume a capacity. It's really easy. It's really easy. Here's a link on how to do that. What do you need to be able to, what do you need to do? Well, you first need a FSQ capacity, and you need to be a Fabric administrator with the right things. And then what you need to do is you need to go, and you literally can just like pause or resume the capacity inside your Azure portal. Now, I don't have any paid capacities inside my Azure portal right now, so I can't actually show you this in action, but it's pretty easy. So you go to the Azure portal, you literally click on your Microsoft Fabric service, and you click pause, and that stops it. And then you go resume, and then that resumes it. And I know you're about to ask, can I schedule this using an Azure Runbook? You sure can. You sure can. In fact, there's a module from the module gallery that you can just schedule whatever you want it to be on and off whenever you need it, right? And so I really love this for the types of operations where you've got like really large data engineering like operations that need to run on a very infrequent schedule. So if you've got a bulk load, and this is pretty common actually in kind of enterprise scenarios, in lots of scenarios where you've got like this big bulk load of data that needs to come in and be processed, and then you don't do it for the rest of the month, right? Well, then just have your one big capacity and then schedule it to just spin up, run that workload, and then get it all into one lake, into one lake, and then turn it off. You know, like process it to your reports or whatever, and then that's it. It's done. How good's that? So I really like that. Good fun. Okay. What else can we do to optimize our capacity? There's another link here. I've got all these links in the presentation, and yes, I'll share the presentation with you. Evaluate and optimize your Fabric capacity. So you can, here's where it talks about bursting and smoothing and throttling, and then doing all of that. You need to be able to figure out what you're doing. So the basic process, get all these words off the page. The basic process for when you're starting in Fabric. So let's say you haven't even turned on Fabric yet. How do we approach this? So the first thing we do is we turn on the trial, right? And then we move workloads onto the trial. It's really easy to do, to be honest. You can use shortcuts and all those bits and pieces to point to your existing environments if you want. And then you're using the monitoring, the monitoring app to figure out, okay, how much it's using. And then you can start to then do that optimization piece. So you turn on the trial first, then once you've turned on the trial, then you monitor it. And then once you've finished your monitoring, you get 60 days with the trial, then you can go and do, then move it to a production capacity. So that's kind of what they're saying here is that's kind of the way to approach it. Start small and gradually increase. This is an interesting one. I was in a meeting with someone who kind of recommended the opposite, which I thought was interesting. I've always been a start small kind of person, which has mean I go, okay, customer, let's go with a F2 or an F4, and then let's get the basics down, and then see how we go, and then we'll probably hit the throttling. If we start hitting throttling, then we'll move to an F8 or whatever. Another way you can go. I think there's a kind of a bit of a, I don't know if it's a hack, but it's almost something you can do where if you start at an F64, I think it does. There are some advantages to that, and then you can throttle it and you can kind of spin it down. I don't know exactly what the thinking was there, but they were kind of talking about it's actually a good idea to start, because probably the one consideration you need to think about is that if you're doing dev test, then it's good to start small and then just see how much you're using. That's fine, because you don't really have a user experience kind of aspect to it. But if you want to make sure that your user experience is going to be really good, in other words, all the reports are going to work well, all the rest of it, then you might be tempted to start a little higher to ensure that your those peak loads are all taken care of, and then looking at that, using that metrics app and stuff to figure out, okay, we can ramp it down. So depending on kind of how kind of budget friendly your data project is, I guess, there's two different approaches. So maybe for user facing capacities, particularly if you're going in that F64 range, you might want to start a little higher to ensure that you're covering bulk peak loads. But that's a philosophical thing as well, whether you're happy to kind of let you're only introducing a small number of users first, and they're the early adopters that are usually okay with things kind of breaking in the early days of a project. I don't know. There's a couple of different bits and pieces there. Guru said, is it possible to stop the trial and use it after some time? I think the trial just runs and you only get the 60 days and that's it. There's a restriction. I'm just looking at some of the questions in the chat. It looks like Darren's doing a good job of answering all the questions. Thanks, Darren. I appreciate you. All right. Other optimization tips from the Optimize thing, planning and budgeting tools. Use the app to monitor your capacity. Manage high compute usage. So look out for throttling and rejection, because that's going to be a thing. You can potentially set up notifications when your utilization hits a certain amount. You could use Data Activator to do this type of stuff as well, probably. Let's have a look at these premium capacity notifications. So in the admin portal, you can set up notifications when you've got a certain amount of capacity used, which is nice. Okay, and that just lives inside the admin portal of Power BI/Fabric. Okay, so if you're using 95% of your available capacity and you want to be notified when that's happening, then maybe you can set that one up. So this has got all of your nice notification things, which is cool. So I like that. What else was there? Optimizing by different experiences as well. So this is a good little thing, because if you're mostly using it for data warehousing, there's some optimization tips here. If you're using it for Spark or data engineering, if you're using KQL, then there's some optimization tips here specifically for those workloads, right? So you've got consumption based on the number of seconds, and because I did notice the KQL workloads are the ones that really churn the CUs, right? So there's a lot of opportunities to do when you're doing real time, to potentially optimize things a bit, because real time's real time. It's gonna cost. Guru says, I have a requirement to release a report to 2,000 plus users. How do I decide which capacity I need to use? Is there stress testing I can do before the release? Yeah, so I mean, your F64 doesn't include like the trial. I don't think it includes the external sharing, does it? I don't think it does. So in that scenario, you would have to spin up probably an F64 minimum, because you got 2,000 users. You might even consider going to an F6 depending on kind of where you're at, and then you have to monitor it over time. You probably, because you're sharing externally or sharing to users, you pretty much have to start at F64 if you want them to have free licenses, because it doesn't make financial sense to buy 2,000 Pro licenses when you can just get an F64 capacity. So yeah, it's a bit of a balancing act, but in that scenario, you'll need to, as a part of your project, you'll need to factor in that you need at least an F64 SKU to be able to do those early tests, and you might roll it out to maybe 100 users and see how much, and then guess based on that whether you need any more. But your minimum is going to be F64 there. Yeah, if it's embedded. Yeah, definitely. F64 SKUs do include embedded, just like the premium P1 SKUs do as well. So you can do embedded with F64 Plus. Right. Well, we've got a few minutes left. Do I have any other tips? No, that's basically it. So we're offering Fabric Jumpstart at the moment. So, get the right start with Fabric with our Jumpstart program. This is basically, we're still working out the details, but we've got a Fabric implementation stuff. It includes architecture workshops with me. So if you like my style, then I can come in and have a look at your thing and look at the architecture and take the team through what we would recommend, or what the best practices are. We can do training, we can do mentoring, which includes paired programming with one of our people to build either reports or data engineering, or if you need to do KQL or whatever. We've got a bunch of templates that we're going to be putting into this, and we're also looking at, you might be able to get a discount on your Fabric subscription through a partner subscription through us. So if you're interested in that, I don't have all the details. We don't have a website for it yet. We're literally just spinning this up. So have a chat to me. Be interesting to learn about. If you're interested in this type of thing, then I'll tailor it to your needs as well. So jump on board with that. Where could the presentation recording be found for later access? Yes, I will put the presentation, so this recording, up on our website for you to access. Thea, our marketing person, will make sure that that is available for you. It also will probably go up on YouTube. You can find our YouTube channel, which is where all my other Lunch and Learn stuff goes. All right. Fabric templates, there we go. So there is just maybe someone check that you can download the template from there, but that hopefully will work. We try it. So it'll just take you to our SharePoint. You should get the PBIT file. Remember, you need to, and you should be able to download it. Yep. Well, that's mine though, so I don't know whether you can get it. Your PBIT file, you can, you just need to, you'll just need to install the app first, and then point it to the app and refresh, and it should just work. If you have any problems with it, let me know. I'll fix it up. No worries. Just hit me. Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Ross. Awesome. Thank you, Simon. Yeah, get in touch with me, mate. I'm happy to help out. And then yeah, we'll all go from there. But that's it for today. Thank you very much, folks. I will be hanging around to have a chat if you want to have a chat, or you've got a particular question, or you just want to do it. I'm going to stop the recording. But thanks to you that are watching the recording. We'll see you soon. And the rest of you, thank you for coming along.